And as I said, next up is Nonprofit Inside, but let's take a gander at the weather.
Hi, this is Lego Tom here, and I'll be with David Unger, but first the weather. Today we've got partly cloudy, a high of 72, low of 52. Tomorrow on Saturday, partly cloudy again with a high of 70 and a low of 57. On Sunday, we've got a chance of thunder showers and humidity coming in, 50%. 82 is the high, 68 is the low. And on Monday, 40% chance of thunder showers with a high of 79 and a low of 64.
And welcome to Nonprofit Insider.
Welcome, excuse me. Welcome to Nonprofit Insider. My name is David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show with executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I've worked in the nonprofit world for over 30 years. In those years, I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that provide critical services and benefits to our community that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff, or underwriters, or of USM. We played a little kumbaya as this is the last show of the summer, and when you're at residential camp or day camp, you usually end up with a closing campfire, so I thought I'd close out the summer with a little nostalgia. And a special shout out to Miss Lucy. Today we have two guests with us, and actually it's kind of annoying right now because there's this little thing running around the floor that keeps bumping into my feet, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But today we have Tom Bickford and Gail Bickford. Tom is the executive director of Maine Robotics, and Gail, your position is?
I'm the early childhood coordinator and left hand.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to Nonprofit Insider.
Well, thank you, David.
Is this thing going to bump into my leg the whole half hour we're here?
Well, you know, it is an autonomous robot, and it has a mind of its own. It's been programmed to run around and look for things and bump into them and then go off and do something different.
And the age of the child who programmed this?
This one, well, I'll be honest, I programmed it this morning, but we have kids all summer long that program this exact same thing as early as age 9.
Okay, and I think you programmed it just to continually bump my leg.
Well, you know, everything has to have a purpose.
I understand. Well, let's get back to the agenda here. You're executive director of Maine Robotics. How would you describe what Maine Robotics is?
Maine Robotics really has a twofold existence. One is we are an economic development outreach. We learned when I was still up at the University of Maine that we needed to get more people into and understanding and training for computer science. That's what started me off on this in 2000. And in 2004, we took it off as a nonprofit. Our programs had grown, and we were losing funding at the university, and we've been self-sufficient now since 2004 as our own nonprofit. So we are trying to keep the economic fires of Maine going by giving them a steady stream of educated and committed youth who want to go into engineering and computer science, science in general, mathematics, all of those fields, which, if you look at any of the studies, we're greatly lacking in all of those. So that's part of it. And this is back before laptops in the schools. This is back before they even had coined the term STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we've been doing this longer than those have even been out there. We knew this problem existed. The second thing that we do, which I think is just as key, is there are thousands and thousands and thousands of Maine youth who have wanted to find their niche ever since they're growing up with technology. They don't want to spend all their time, and I mean no digs against athletics or against music or poetry camps or what have you.
Right.
But these kids want to learn about technology. They want to program computers. They want to move into what is their future. And yet, up until recently, those kinds of activities simply didn't exist. So we have been fulfilling that. Right now, we work with 1,700 kids youth all the way from ages 6 all the way up to 16, trying to get them skills and exposure so they understand what it would mean to become a computer programmer. What would it mean to become an engineer, and giving them some exposure to that.
And how many organizations in the state are like yours?
Well, we are pretty much the oldest one. We've seen several start up in the past few years. The Robotic Institute of Maine is another one. They handle high school only, and they took over that part, which we really hadn't gone into, and they're doing a great job. There are other smaller groups here and there that are trying to get youth into these areas. You can't read a newspaper the past couple of years without STEM being a major component, as the rest of the nation realizes, as a nation, we're 150,000 engineers short. We're 150,000 computer programmers short. And, you can scale it down to Maine. Every state in the nation is short of these absolutely critical people. And so now we're seeing a little more money flowing, a little more resources available. I won't say it's great, but it's better. It's better than talking to somebody 10 years ago.
Right. So right now we're in the middle of probably going to be a fairly heated race for governor. And without going into expressing any opinions, do you think the state overall is supportive of increasing this technology? Because we've heard a lot about it, that the three candidates are committed to it, but do you see it in action?
Well, yes, no, and in between.
Okay.
Everybody has always been willing to be supportive as long as they don't have to open a pocketbook.
Okay.
I mean, that's nonprofit world 101, right?
Right.
And we certainly know, and I'm not saying in favor of one candidate or the other. Angus King has certainly been a true advocate of technology in the schools. He's, back when he was governor, he got the whole laptop program really off the ground, which has put Maine in an absolutely incredible position to move our youth forward. But what it didn't do, and what it's just starting to do now, is we have been producing more educated users of technology.
Okay.
And what we need to be doing is producing more producers of technology. And there's a huge difference between those two. I want a T-shirt that says, "I'd rather be a producer than a user."
Right.
And it doesn't matter what you're talking about. You'll get paid more as a producer. You'll have in general, a more productive, happier life if you're busy producing something,
Right.
than if your only role in life is as a consumer.
Now, Gail, you had mentioned you're the early childhood director.
One of the things that we discovered along the way was that parents would often say, well, okay, but what, do you have anything for our 6-year-old? Do you have anything for a 7-year-old? And we started to realize that there is a real need for a program for that age group. So what we came up with was, we've done it, we've had 2 pilot programs called Community Builders. And it's an opportunity for that 6, 7, and 8-year-old to learn how to build with Legos. Now, while most people would say, well, anyone could build with Legos, but there are some real engineering principles. How do you build a structure that doesn't fall apart?
Right.
So that's what we started as a half-day program, and it's been very successful. What we incorporated into that, because at that age, they want to be able to take their creations home. Well, you can't do that. There wouldn't be anything left for the next day. So what we did was we started taking photographs, printing them out, and then the child would put them in a booklet and create a photo journal. So at the end of the week of camp, they had this photo journal. And what they also had to do was, under each photograph, at least write 3 words themselves, telling something about that picture. So we were incorporating the newly learned writing skills, problem solving, construction, all the steps that are necessary for the things that they're going to be doing when they're 9, 10, and beyond.
Right. So, Tom, you had indicated a little bit some of the issues around being an executive director of a nonprofit? Besides funding.
I imagine everybody says
Yeah,
that one.
that's why I've taken that out of the
Absolutely.
equation. What issues have you found in today's marketplace, today's community, being an executive director, that have gotten to you or frustrated you?
Well, I can tell you what my biggest frustration is, which is not always necessarily an external frustration, it's an internal one. And that has to do with the fact that I come out of, my background's one of these multidisciplinary. I used to be a middle school teacher. I taught science and math. I have a degree in engineering. I went back and got my master's in that. And I would have had probably a master's in computer science, except when I was doing it, they didn't have a master's in the state of Maine. It predates, I've been programming computers since '79. And for those of you out there who know, '79 means that the computer was the size of a table. So I have a real love of the technology and working with the children. I love seeing the aha moments that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids have every single summer, every fall, every spring when we're working with these children, and they're getting something that they're not getting anywhere else, and it's moving them forward. And I would love to do that full time, but I'm also an executive director, which means payroll, it means tax forms, it means hiring people, it means doing performance evaluations, writing up brochures, all of the 1,000 administrative details, keeping our website up to
Just
date.
1,000.
Just 1,000.
Okay.
I'm rounding. It could be 190, 1999, but I could easily stay 100% busy on that and trying to find a way to do both. We were very lucky a couple of years ago. We finally reached that point. We're now 2 full-time employees. And so Ben Goff, who also works in our office, has taken a fair amount of that load off. But unfortunately, we probably could use 4 people in the office to have it run appropriately. The good news is that we pull it off. Somehow we pull it off. Our ratings through the families and the kids that come to our program are outstanding. I mean, we just had 500 children in camp. We'll never get 100% singing our praises. I mean, it's impossible.
Right.
But our survey, which we sent out at the end of the summer, already indicates about a 92% listing us as outstanding or exceeds expectations.
That's great.
I think so.
All right, so we have to go to our mid-break identifier. And as we do every week, we have a trivia question that I've not told you anything about. It's related to what you do.
But David, I gave you the $20. You were supposed to give it to me ahead of time.
Price went up.
Oh, man.
Okay, the word robot comes from the Czech word robos, and that means child, machine, or slave. So let me go to the break, and then you can give me your answer. Today, this is Nonprofit Insider on WMPG Community Radio for Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire, and I'm David Unger. And today we're talking to Tom and Gail Bigford, Executive Director of Maine Robotics. So, is it child, machine, or slave?
Well, David, it's slave.
Okay.
From Carol Capek's, Rossum's Universal Robots, 1920.
Oh my goodness gracious, you hit that right on the head. I'm impressed. Thank you. Well, that was good. There's only been one other person who nailed something like that to the date. So, and I got my source from the Daily. What News? The word robot comes from the Czech name meaning forced labor or slave. Oh, good. So let's go back to the frustration that you're having. I'm going to use the word frustration that may or may not be the right word, of trying to balance the stuff you love to do with the kids and the programming versus the administrative tasks. What advice would you give a new executive director of a small agency about how to balance that?
Well, I know how they tell you to start a nonprofit, and that is to line up your board, find some funding, and then start your work. Well, we went backwards way of that, and I know
You'd be surprised how many do that.
So we started with a shoestring budget. We still have the shoestring, and have been doing that ever since. Obviously, our budget has increasingly grown. You can't serve 1,700
Right.
youth. We run workshops. We run these state level competitions. We do the summer camps, and we are always doing the shoestring budget, and it's like, oh goody, we got another $5,000. What more can we do with it? And we'll expand some program. And I can't iterate enough. Every time we put our shingle out at a new location to say, hey, we're running something new here, or get a school to come on board and say, we'll offer it locally, they fill up. I get calls from teachers saying, well, what if I can't get 8 or 10 kids to want to do this? And I just laugh at them. I said, what your problem is going to keep it to a manageable level of kids. And then the flip side is, the thing that hurts us, I hate hearing, is, well, we had 10 kids, but they were busy doing basketball. And, so they'll lose kids as the sports get going. And I played sports when I was in middle school and in high school and in college. And I love sports. My wife and I were avid bicyclists. We will hit our 1,000-mile marks this summer. Well, fall. The summer is pretty much over, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we sang Kumbaya already.
That's right. So we're into the fall. But Dean Kamen, who founded FIRST, which is this huge nonprofit out of Manchester, New Hampshire, and they run international programs. One of his quotes is, and it's a really applicable one, every single youth that goes into our programs will have a job waiting for them when they get out. And what other program can say that? We have in the state of Maine, and again, sports is huge. If you like sports, you ought to be doing sports. But we do team sports too. They're just team sports for the mind. And the kids are learning skills that will become lifelong vocational skills, which, that's what
Right.
we want. That's what we
Right.
want our youth to be learning how to do.
So you've mentioned a smattering of different programs and activities that you
I do
offer,
that, yeah.
which is great. But I'm going to focus in on which one, if you had to hang a banner and say, this is our program that sets us apart, what would that be? That's a tough question.
Well, it is, because we're seasonal. It's like, what's your best fruit? Well, when blueberry season's in, it's blueberries. But the one that's uniquely ours is probably our summer camp program.
Okay.
But our largest and our oldest program, which is probably the best educational program, is the FIRST Lego League, which, as I said, we run it in Maine, but it's an international program.
All right, but let's focus in on what makes the summer camp program so unique.
So what we do, we run what I call a distributed summer camp program. It's why I have almost no hair on my head. Obviously, for radio, just assume that I'm bald on the top.
This thing keeps hitting my ankle.
Well, feed it some batteries, it'll go away. So the summer camps, when we first offered it, it was only offered in Orono, Maine. And nobody else in the state offered anything like it. This is back in 2002. There simply was no other academic technology camp that was, there was probably somebody doing something, but I didn't know about them. And we had kids coming daily from as far away as Freeport because there was such a need. It's like, my kid needs this. And the only place I could go to get it was in Orono. Well, pretty soon we were in Portland. We were right here on the campus at USM. We were at some schools around the state. Right this last summer, we were in 22 different locations around the state. We move our staff and our equipment, because there's a huge amount of equipment that goes around our camps to allow the kids to build and program and experience this. So it's a van full. And then what we do is we staff it with a teacher who understands the robotics. They use them in their classroom, or they have some background in that, which is not the easiest thing to find. It's a lot easier now than it was 10 years ago, because there have been so many people we've been working with now for 10 years that they now have experience. The first year I was running it with a graduate student up at the University of Maine, and that was it. And we had 16 kids. Now we had 506 kids in camp, 22 different locations, including right across the border in St. Stephen's. New Brunswick, and people said, wow, you went all the way up to Canada. And I said, well, it's actually closer than Portland. So sure, I went up there.
It sounds good.
We went international.
Right.
We then back those teachers up. So we have an adult who understands the age population, and they understand the robotics, and they understand the curriculum components that we're trying to instill for these youth. And then we add to that usually some college students who are in their engineering or computer science background. Every once in a while we'll get a physics major or a mathematician or somebody else, or maybe somebody who's got 4 years of experience working at a summer camp and likes the technology, or they were on a high school robotics team or whatever. So we staff it with people who are not warm bodies. They are mentors in every shape of the sense. And then we bring these kids in, and they have all the equipment that they don't normally have exposure to. They have a teacher who understands what it is that we're trying to do, which is to instill a lifelong learning desire towards the STEM fields, engineering. We don't care if they become an engineer or a computer programmer, but we want them to think that's something they can do. I have been walking into 4th, 5th, 6th grade classrooms for the past 15 years, and I almost always ask the same question. Do you know what an engineer does?
Well, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
You meet me for the first time. You know my name because I might be a major donor. I know nothing about your organization. Tell me why I should give to you. Why should I make a donation to you in 30 seconds?
In 30 seconds. Darn, I have such a hard time shortening it down.
25.
Maine Robotics is the best way in the state of Maine to help get our youth moving into that pipeline that will eventually lead to your company having access to engineers, computer programmers, technologists who want to stay here in Maine, who want to put those skills they've learned to use. And there's no better way to encourage and keep your own business running happily than by having people who can do the work for you.
But you didn't ask me for anything.
And we need your money desperately.
Okay.
and volunteers as well.
So yeah, you had mentioned when we did our warm up that you have about 150 volunteers throughout the state.
So we have volunteers that work with the local programs. So we might have a school. Pick a school. We work with over 100 schools around the state, and they're going to have local volunteers who are running the program locally. We provide the mentoring to them. I can't tell you how many phone calls and emails we get. How do I do this? How do I do that? Because they need to talk to somebody who does this for a living.
Right.
And by the time we're done with them, they'll know how to answer that question, and next week it'll be a different question.
Okay. So, Gail, do you use volunteers in your program?
We do. Actually, we use them wherever we possibly can, but most especially for our special events like the first Lego League and the track meet. Those are the times that those volunteers are absolutely invaluable.
So you could still use more volunteers if people were interested.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Do you have any questions for me?
Gosh. Hey, that wasn't on your list of questions.
Your thing keeps bumping me on my ankle, so I got to do something.
It'll run out of batteries soon.
Okay.
We've made great strides. As I said, we started out what you probably would call your mom and pop nonprofit, where we had your board of directors who signed off on a form once a year, and that was it.
Right.
We now have, 2 years ago, we started a robust board development, and we now have board members from Unum and Eastern Maine Healthcare and the state of Maine, private smaller entities, and from the nonprofit world. And so we are moving towards growing past that. I will always have that. I probably suffer from the same thing half of our kids do, which is that I'm more comfortable with technology than I am with people. And I'm still a people person. But I'll tell you, that part of being a nonprofit director, which is about building relationships and schmoozing and being out there and going to the events, that will probably drive me to an early death long before you said, well, why can't you just do that? And I said, well, tell you what, I will teach you how to program in assembler, one of the nastiest programming languages out there, and they will all go, I could never do that. And then I look at them and I said, well, why do you assume that I can do what you might think is easy? And that's the one thing that I wish I knew how to do better. I'd love to find somebody I could have as my mentor in terms of moving Maine robotics into the better known world.
Okay.
One of our board members calls us the best kept STEM secret in Maine. Well, actually, he'd say STEAM, which is he likes to add the arts in there. And our first Lego League program in the fall, those kids are doing art as well.
Right. And before each show, I do look at the websites of the individuals and try and learn as much as I can about it. And if I had to give one piece of advice on it, I would say part of it would be the branding of it, of how people perceive your organization and how you communicate that brand and that perception to the general community. The other piece of it is really having a marketing plan, at least somewhat of a marketing plan, to make sure that information gets out to the general community and how you do that.
Yep.
So that, through my experience, that's what I've seen.
Yep.
And if someone wanted to contact you, how would they do that?
Well, we are online, have been for a decade now, at www.mainrobotics.org. That's all one word, Maine, spelled out like the state, robotics.org. If you just went to Google and did Maine and robots, we'd be the first thing that pops up there.
Right. Well, that's how I found it.
And you can also give us a call at 866-4340. We are always looking for volunteers, and we always need your support.
So you're looking for participants in your program,
Absolutely.
volunteers, and any kind of financial help that could come along.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, this was a great show. I'm glad we had the opportunity to get together, and hopefully this next upcoming season will be great for you.
Yeah, in here, let me stop that robot. It
There you
keeps
go.
bumping.
Thank you. Now that the show's over. Well, next week we have Carrie Zeiss. Carrie is the Chief Operating Officer of United Way of Greater Portland. The music appears courtesy of Mike Hubbard. You can find Mike on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website to see where he's playing this weekend. Thanks to Deb Danger, NPI's executive engineer. You can catch Deb on Morning Street Fridays at 6:30. If you know of a nonprofit that should be on the show, please email me at npi@davidunger.net. Past shows are archived at www.tcmgr.com, Nonprofit Insider tab. And again, another shout out to Miss Lucy.